Hello, it's your host, Bree, and welcome back to Into the Story. Last episode, Ken Larson told us a story about the moment his body forced him to pause, and how that pause helped him ask a question that changed his life. In this bonus episode, Ken shares how defining your core values is one of the most powerful ways to take back control of your life. And you're going to hear him asking me some coaching questions. And you'll hear how I actually struggle a little bit to answer. But that's the point. Figuring out what matters most takes a bit of work. If you've ever felt unsure about your next step, or like something in your life is just a little bit off, this conversation will help you to start finding answers. Let's get into my conversation with Ken.
I think a message that I try to pass along to my clients, and I try to live it, is that what I'm viewing in the world with the leaders that I work with, they do go to great lengths. They go to great lengths to figure out what their core values are for the business and their purpose statement, their vision statement, their mission statement. And they do all this great work to get these. And then they expect all their troops from, tens to thousands and hundreds to follow these. My observation over the last several years of doing this is that a lot of people try to follow these, but they're not following what matters to them personally. And what I found fascinating, Bree, was COVID. The great resignation happened here in North America. People just started quitting their jobs left and right. And not just because the government was giving them money, but I think that stress and pressure put people under a situation where they had to think about it. Wait a minute now. What really matters to me? And I think people were forced into that, which I found very, very interesting. And they didn't know what that was. So a lot of people had to figure out that stuff. But so the phrase I use is, are you living your life by design or by default? Have you designed your core values and are you following them? Or are you living by default to someone else's or no one else's or society's norms? Or are you following your own true north? And that's what I see. And that's the message I try to get through to as many clients as I can.
Right. So, what would you say then to someone who maybe they're not going through something as dramatic as you did in your story, where your body literally forced you, it put you cross eyed and made you close your eyes to
Mm.
say, Ken, you are not doing well. You need to stop doing and start being and start thinking about what is really important. But for someone who just has this little feeling that they're just not on the right track, whether it's their job, a
Mm.
relationship, something else in their life that's not working, what is the first exercise you would recommend for them to do to find what are those core values that they hold?
Mhm. No, that's a great question. I'm a big journaler. I went to a journaling course some years ago and I learned a lot about it. And one of the phrases the teacher gave us was, if you want to live your life twice while you're living it, keep a journal. And I found that fascinating. And I write every morning, I write every night, and I get to relive my day and live my next day before and while I'm doing it. So I'd highly recommend people pick up a really, really nice journal that they're proud of and a really fancy, a really nice pen that they like it. Maybe go online, take a journaling course, do a little homework or research, and just start to dump stuff out of our brains that are in the back and the subconscious. And the core question is, what really matters? And other ways to say it is, what's your purpose? Why are we here? There are tons of books written on this stuff. Why are we here? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And I think journaling is probably one of the best things. Getting a coach is also a great thing. People say, Ken, well, who should I get for a coach? Do some homework, figure it out, go interview a few. I interview clients as much as they interview me, and they have to interview me too. So things like journaling, getting a coach, having conversations with people that are close. Talk about these things, but catch them. If we leave them in the back of our brains, our brains lie to us all the time because it just wants to control stuff. So get it down on paper. to figure out to the point where we're going, okay, now I have a better idea what really matters most to me. And that's what happened in COVID. People were forced into it and they quit their jobs because they realized they had no idea and they were just plugging into a system and a culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think COVID forced all of us to think really about what matters, and also seeing so much chaos happening in the world made us think what matters. I'm thinking now about myself, and I don't have my core values written anywhere, but I do know my non-negotiables. Non-negotiables mean things that I need to do every day to be well,
Mhm.
my health, to feel good and motivated. Um, is that another way of kind of finding your core values, like thinking about what we need to do to feel good? Or is that not a path to finding core values?
Absolutely. And if I can put on my coach hat for a second, all those things that you do, what's under the surface of those that is driving that?
I don't know.
Any thoughts?
I mean, let's for example, let's just go into this a little bit. I recently, let's say the last maybe 3 years ago, started waking up very early. For me, very early, maybe not
Mm,
for you. I know you wake up very, very early, so that I get to have some time alone. You spoke about in your core values connection, and the first being connection with yourself.
mm,
For me, I'm someone who
mm,
needs time alone. Not because I don't like people, I love people,
mhm,
but if I don't have time alone, I can't really be present for others. And I have two small children, so I wake up and that is one of my non-negotiables. Yoga or gym or hiking in the mountains, and then possibly a bit of meditation. And I have journaled, but I don't do it consistently. So those are doing, but I don't know what's underneath that. I don't know. I just know that
mm.
I just know that I need it. I can't see what's underneath it.
What's the result you get from that for all those
Clar
behaviors you just mentioned?
Yeah, clarity. I can think clearly when I get to my desk, and I can think clearly when I need to deal with anything.
Mm, I heard a great word, if I can,
Okay,
clarity.
clarity.
How does that resonate with you as a value? Something that is not just a non-negotiable, but something that matters a lot to you.
It is like my favorite word.
There you
Okay,
go. And all it
so
took was a little conversation.
right. So then would you recommend for people maybe as a first step to either have a conversation with someone or even kind of write in a journal what I just wrote, right? Think about a few
Mhm,
non-negotiables that you have to feel good and then look around what's underneath that. Why do you do that? What is
mhm.
driving it?
And there's other ways to say it besides core values. You mentioned non-negotiables. There's, behavioral principles or things like that. So I don't think people can get hung up on the term core values, but that's what matters most to me. I do have one caution, Bree, and with AI these days, it's too easy for people to go into AI and say, "Well, what are my core values?" And here's how I behave, and you prompt the crap out of it. But I really, really, really push our clients to avoid AI because it will hallucinate. It will try hard to please you. I think this has to come from our inner selves, and we have to write it. So I really ask people stay away from AI on this one because it's not you. You have to own this.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something that can get more and more difficult is owning our ideas. You know, not giving
Mhm,
over the power to whatever your favorite AI is, but
mhm.
simply being in your own thoughts and thinking about these things. What is important to me, or journaling them, or having a conversation with someone that you trust. That's a really, really good point. Now, so how do you with clients specifically or with businesses, is this the foundation of everything that you do? Is this kind of the first thing that you recommend any individual or organization do before working on, excellence and performance?
I'm a big believer in foundation, and the engineering firms I work with understand that. thankfully. Foundations are important, and if I think back to my experience at Mount Royal when I got let go, that was a metaphorical earthquake. My ground was moving, and I needed to solidify my ground. So when it comes to corporate groups as teams, one of the first things we do is determine what our values are, what matters most to us. And I often joke, I say, if the 6'7" bald guy, me, followed you around all day, what would I see you do consistently that shows me what matters to you? And the same question applies to the person. If I followed you around all day, and I know kind of creepy, what would I see you do repeatedly all day long that would show me what matters most to you? And then when the client reflects on that, they start to realize that maybe there's a misalignment there with what really matters and how they're behaving. And 9 times out of 10, Brie, it has to do with health. 9 times out of 10, if not 99 times out of 100, people miss the health piece. So I'm really big on that. I act it every day and I really believe in it because, again, if you might think you have 1,000 problems, but if you don't have your health, and of course, all the clients nod their head, but now, implementing life change is big. So you can either wait for an event like I had, or you can do it by design and get ahead of it. We learn 2 ways. We learn by stuff happening to us and going, "Oh my goodness, I'll learn something," or we can design it in advance. So I try to get people to be more proactive with this. So yes, once the client hires me, I say, "Okay, what are you hiring me for? What's the reason? What's the purpose?" Once we get that clear, I usually back up and say, "Okay, wait a minute. What's your foundation? What ground are you standing on? And what is that ground made of?" That's always an interesting conversation, kinda gets people to stop in their tracks and realize that their ground is not solid.
Yeah. Do you think that this idea of really knowing what our foundation is just comes naturally to certain people, that some people just have it innate, or I don't know how else to say that, but what I'm trying to say is, do we need to do this? Do we need to do the work of finding this foundation, these core values, these non-negotiables? Or do you think some people just know them and they stay the same the course of their entire life?
I think there are some people that just know them. They just may not have brought it to the forefront of their brains. If I follow them around and they say, "Well, here's the things I do," and I say, "Well, what are the values?" "Well, this, and this, and this, and this." Great. I think people do have that, certain. I think others don't, and they're floundering. They're the fish on the deck of the boat just flopping, and I think that's what happened to a lot of people in COVID. They were forced that. But yeah, there are some people who know that, but going back to your word, clarity. One of my phrases with my client is clarity is king. If we don't have clarity, by definition, we don't have anything. And I know that's an extreme comment, but with leadership teams, say 10 people of a $1 billion company, and they don't have common clarity, I say, well, then by definition, we don't have any at all. So, yes, there are some people that know that. They may just not have put words to it. Very few just go, this. And I go, oh, I've only run into that very, very seldom.
Okay. I find, and I'm interested to hear your take on this, that the people that I've met that I would consider high performers or very successful or at the top, whatever word you want to use, they have certain things in common. This is my own experience of what I see. And tell me if you've seen something similar. One of them is that they get fuel from people telling them they can't or
Mm.
failing. Like they use it as a fuel very specifically. Is that something that you've seen before?
Let me put it back on you. What do you think high performers like that would say is driving them?
I would say that they have usually one very clear goal. And anything that gets in the way of that, they're throwing it to the side.
I'm with you on that one, but I think we have to be careful here. The high performers that I run across, and being one in my life, what's driving it is my real question. And a lot of high performers here in the city of Calgary, in the oil and gas field, the high performers are driven by, money. success, status, all those things that I go, "Really? Is that what's really important to you?" And you'll find I find a lot about who people really are is when they retire. And they go, "Oh,
Mm.
what do I do now?" And too many leaders call metaphorically die at their desks because they don't know what really matters to them after they've achieved so-called results that society says they should. And I always joke with my clients, "Don't be a should head." "What are you talking about?" "Well, you should do this and should do that and should do this," and we should it on ourselves all over the place, and then we get it on our souls, SOUL, and then we carry that around with us. So I don't think high performers and knowing what matters to you most are synonymous. I think they're different things. Sometimes they're together, sometimes more often than not, they are not. And I often talk about 2 North Poles, and people go, "What?" There are 2 North Poles. There is the geographic, which is how we map it as humans, but then there's the magnetic. And I found out, did a little homework, that the magnetic North Pole changes all the time because of the Earth's crust moving all the time. Sometimes the magnetic north can be off the true north or the geographical north by as much as 70 kilometers. And I go, "Really?" So I akin that to societal influence. This is what you should do. You should be a high performer. You should have a big house. You should make lots of money. You should. But meanwhile, our true north, the geographical, metaphorically, doesn't move. And I believe that's based on our core values. What matters most? And Stephen Covey, I used to teach 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said one thing in there that really landed on me. He said, "You won't say no to what doesn't matter until you say yes to what does." His phrase was something like, "You can't say no to something unless there's a burning yes inside." And if I have that burning yes, and it is so important to me, and I think it's based on our values and what's important to us, it puts me in position to look at something and go, "That's not for me." And be able to say no to something that society may say, "You should do that." And how many people who left their jobs in COVID redesigned their entire careers because they realized what they were doing wasn't in alignment with what matters to them. And I found that just absolutely fascinating. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense, and
Mm,
I love this, uh, first of all, this metaphor, but also this, and I think most people have at some point in their lives had a burning yes. They had a
mm,
burning yes of what they want, and it makes it easy to say no to other things. And I
mhm,
think everything that we've spoken about today and this idea of finding what is the being, what is the importance to you and only uniquely you. First, doing
mhm,
that work through journaling, through conversations, through a coach, if you're able to do that. And then helping that lead you to a burning yes, to start
mhm.
leading you to a true north. So you're able to say no, which is obviously really important.
One of my favorite questions is, "Who are you?" Sorry to interrupt. "Who are you?" And people automatically talk to me about what they do. And I go, "Wait a minute. Okay, that's nice, but who are you?" They don't have an answer. What would life look like if you knew who you really are and what mattered most? Hmm. All of a sudden, that stimulates some deep thought and some conversation. And I've seen some of my clients actually have breakdowns right in front of me. Holy craps. I had no idea. But now that I put some thought into that, okay, now that you know your burning yeses, how might that shift what you do? And I'm not trying to get people to quit their jobs. I'm just trying to get them more in alignment with what matters. So I find that interesting. I used to do that at cocktail parties. And my wife at the time would get so upset with me. "Stop asking that question because you make people so uncomfortable." "Well, so who are you?" "Well, I do this and this and this and this." I go, "Oh, that's interesting, but who are you?" Uh,
And what do you think would be the benefit to not only an organization, well, let's just say an organization, to not say a whole country or an entire planet of human beings who all really knew their core values and all really had burning yeses. How do you think things would change? How would they shift?
I'm a big believer that there's a difference between motivation and inspiration. The root of motivation is we have a motive to act, and that motive may not be our own. It might be that metaphorical should that I referred to earlier. I'm a big believer in inspiration, which is inspire, it's to breathe in. And I think a great example is people in the world over history of how long, ever long you want to think. How do they inspire us? By not what they did, but by who they are. And one of my favorite stories, and I mentioned this a little earlier, is my good friend Terry Fox.
Can you, for people who don't know who Terry Fox is, can you tell us who he was and what he did?
Yes, Terry Fox lost a leg due to cancer. And then in his rehab, he decided that while he was there, he saw so many young kids, children, babies who had cancer, and it really rocked his world. So he decided to run across Canada for cancer research. He got about halfway, cancer came back, and he eventually passed away. But in the meantime, he inspired a country and by extension, inspired a planet. And I found out just recently that his efforts, the Terry Fox Run, which happens every September in 30 some odd countries, people who never met him. And I was fortunate enough to meet him and be a classmate of his and a basketball teammate for a whole year. And he's raised now indirectly 900 over $900 million for cancer research. Like that's an inspiration. I have a picture of Terry Fox on my wall. And when I'm journaling in the morning, I look up and I glance at him and I go, that inspires me. He had an inner purpose and a set of values that were absolutely non-negotiable, to use your terms. I think those inspirations in our world look across history. He's a big one for me, but it depends on who it is for you. And I often ask, and I'm asking you right now, Bree, who in your life, either directly or indirectly, has inspired you to be who you are? I'm not sure if you want to answer that right now, but who pops to mind?
I A lot of people have inspired me,
Mm,
but someone who I consider a mentor and I find his story very inspiring is Laurie Skreslet, who we both know,
mm.
and who was the first Canadian to go to the top of Everest.
And you've
And
met him.
and I've met him, and he I love his story because
Mm,
he had a very clear burning, burning yes.
mm,
And he also is one of the people who used people saying, "You're not gonna do it." And he
mm.
used it as fuel to say, "Yes, I will, and watch me." But also has a lot
Absolutely.
of other very strong core values that I really admire. So I find that it's
Mhm.
true. It's not a motivation, it's an inspiration, and it pulls me
Yes.
forward.
There you go. And I ask my clients all, come up with all of them. There might be 10, there might be 15. I'm at 27, I believe, and I know who they are, and I can tell you a story about every single one. And when I reflect on them, I go, "Wow." I think of my core values and I'm going, "Yep, in alignment." But that inspires me big time. And we could sit here all day long and talk about who inspires us. And I know you have several others. So I would encourage you, write them down. What is it about them that is so unique that inspires you to light up and be who you really are?
I love that. I love that, especially because it's also using stories, which I believe in the power of stories to help us not only understand each other, but also understand ourselves. Because we understand ourselves when we see ourselves in other people's stories. So that's a really good
Absolutely.
one. I have one
Mhm.
last final question for you before I let you continue on with your morning. What is the worst advice that you have ever been given?
Oh boy, that's a tough one to answer specifically. I think there's a lot of people out there who will tell others what to do because that's what they believe they should do. So we get should on by others. And I've also thought about that a lot of times when we get should on by another, they're telling us what to do because they're not doing it, which I find interesting. So I'm skirting the question a little bit, Bree, but I can't think of anyone in particular right now.
No, I think that's bad advice it's kind of like a chain of bad advice that we're all probably giving or have given or been given at one point in time. And it's just
Mm.
misguided advice because we actually don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And maybe it makes us feel better to tell others what they should be doing instead of really thinking of what we should be doing.
Absolutely. So there's one thing I do with my clients, and I kinda joke, as a basketball coach, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. So just do what I say. I don't care what you think. But as an executive coach, I don't tell anybody what to do, because if
Mm,
I do, then I own the result, they don't.
mm.
So and good coaches will just ask questions until the client goes, "Oh, now I know." So I believe everyone has their own answers. We just have to help excavate and surface them. That's the magic of coaching.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ken. I enjoyed this conversation. I learned new things about myself, which is, I think, a sign of a very good conversation.
Yeah, there you go.
So, what's most important to you? That is the key question at the heart of this episode. And if you're curious to go further, I recommend that you start doing what I have been doing this week, journaling about your non negotiables, those things that you must do to feel good and healthy and to feel like yourself. Then what's underneath them? That's where you'll find your core values. And if you do sit down and take time to reflect and you still have questions, Ken would be very happy to hear from you. You can connect with him on LinkedIn or visit his website, championpsi.com. And if you would like more practical tools to help you speak English with more confidence and impact, especially in high stakes moments, you can join my newsletter at intostory.com. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, I hope that you have a good time, or at least a good story to tell.